Okay. Thank you for joining me. I am the acapellist and I am here with Frank Russo. Frank has an organization that I think is amazing. It's called Singwell, and he agreed to come and visit with me. Hello, Frank. Thanks
Hi, Alan.
for sticking with me with the technological challenges. Sister Google was not playing nice with us today, but we prevailed. So good news.
We did.
Frank, tell us about Singwell. What is Singwell? Who does Singwell serve? What is Singwell all about?
Okay. Thanks for having me, Alan. So Singwell is a organization that's involved with research on singing and well-being, but we're doing more than just research. We're interested in spreading awareness about what singing can do for our well-being, networking with major support organizations that help specific groups that maybe I'll talk about in just a moment,
Mhm.
um, and networking with choral organizations around the country, music therapists, the major Canadian Music Therapy Association, and speech language pathologists and audiologists. So the reason we're networking with SLPs, like these clinical types, and if you like, is that we're focused on singing in communication challenges more than anything. The work we've done in Singwell is broader. It's like we've looked at singing in kids, we've looked at singing in healthy old aging people, um, but the main focus of our research and communication right now is around singing when you've got a communication challenge. So that could be you've had a stroke and you're having difficulty with speech production. You have Parkinson's disease and your ability to articulate is not what it used to be. You stammer, these kinds of things. You have hearing loss, so you can't hear as well as you used to, especially in those noisy situations with lots of background chatter. Stuttering is another area.
Frank, just backing up. So you
Yeah,
have hearing loss.
yeah.
So then how does Singwell help with your hearing loss? I mean, you're about expressing, you're not about hearing. So how does
Yeah.
that work?
Yeah, well, we don't have to. I guess people can find out about all the kind of communication challenges by going to the website, but I'll speak about hearing a little bit.
Sure.
So, of course, when we sing, we don't just sing into a void. We're listening to what we're singing.
Sure.
And if you're singing with other people or you're singing along with a soundtrack, then you have to do this continual adjustment of calibrating your vocal apparatus, putting something out there, and oh, that's a little high, I'll bring it down, or that's a little it's a little flat. It's there's something wrong with it, and you make these rapid adjustments as
Right.
you go.
Right.
So it turns out that, like, theoretically, we've thought for a long time that that might help with the hearing brain, and
Sure.
it turns out that it does. So if you look at older adults with the same level of hearing loss. So we all get a little bit of hearing loss as we
Sure.
age, and some more than others. So you equate the peripheral hearing loss that an audiologist assesses, and you look at people who are active in music and people who are not active in music. It turns out those who are active in music are hearing better on many accounts. And the most important one, I would say, is hearing speech and noise. Because that's the thing that brings people into the audiologist's office. They say that, look, I hear just fine when I'm speaking one-on-one with my partner, when I'm watching TV, listening to the radio. But when I'm in a restaurant, I'm in a noisy area, a party, things have changed. I can't hear the way I used to. So it turns out that if you sing actively or you're playing music actively, that does something to your ability. So what we've tried to do is
Kind of
understand.
hones that capacity kind of a thing, right? Or
It
kind of
does.
creates the neural connections or smooths them out or reinforces them somehow kind of a thing. Is that kind of right?
That's exactly right, Alan. So,
Okay.
like, we
Great.
know that the hearing part of the brain is connected to the motor control area up at the front.
Right. Yeah.
And um, if we're motivated to sing along and sing with other people, then we're giving some motivation to the auditory system to fine tune itself, to get a little sharper than it used to be. And if we look at the auditory system's ability to track a voice, we find that it does better after we give people a little bit of singing training. So as little as
Interesting.
2 months of singing is going to, maybe a little more than 2 months, 2.5 months is what we've done. As little as 2.5 months of singing seems to improve the brain's ability to track the pitch of a voice we're listening to. So it seems like magic until you kind of unpack what's going on with singing.
Interesting. Wow. Another thing that singing can do. Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, of course, there's all these production improvements when we talk about speech communication. So, voices are louder. That's the biggest thing. They're clear. People have more regular speech rhythm. There's evidence for all of those things when people have looked at singing in the kinds of communication disorders I've talked about. Stuttering is an area we know very little about, but there's lots of anecdotal evidence that stutterers, including adult stutterers who sing, you find that the symptoms of stuttering seem to fade away. So there isn't the same kind of stammering. They're very regular. They're very articulate. So what's going on? We have some guesses, but we don't completely know. Singwell's trying to unpack this from a science perspective, like what's happening in the brain, what's happening in our biology. We're also trying to understand it from a social science perspective. So what happens when we sing? Like, we feel better. We feel more connected with other people. Are there ways in which we can bring these positive findings about? We're trying to figure that out by looking at different kinds of choirs, different kinds of groups that sing, to see the kinds of outcomes that these different groups are getting. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I know you and I chatted about this a little bit before, that I'm convinced, and I know from my own personal experience, that singing is super healing for me. And
Mhm.
it's kind of over this whole COVID time, I've kind of evolved into sort of a singing therapy, if you will, that has become sort of my exercise, my spiritual release, my emotional release. It's just like I've lost weight. I feel way better. My mood's way better. And every day I go for, I don't know, an hour roughly, and just sing a cappella with this microphone here and stand here and sing. And I cannot believe how much better I feel and just enjoy every day so much more because of it. It's just
It's
like,
amazing. It's amazing.
it is. It
There
is.
are
And
very few people that I like. You just don't find that very often. You know, people do join choirs and then they're motivated to sing because they're singing with the other people.
right.
But where does this motivation come from to just sing every day? Do you know?
You know what? I think it's always been all my life. I think I've wanted to sing. And when I was a kid, I probably did. And at some point, my mom probably said, "Shut the hell up, would you? You're always blah, blah, blah," you know? And then whatever, maybe I just said, "Oh, I better not do that because that mom doesn't like that." But a couple years ago, it occurred to me that I really enjoy singing. And I kind of reflected back that I stopped because I thought it doesn't serve any purpose. It's not
Right.
making you any money. You're not going to be in a band. So why do you do this? And then now the insight was, why wouldn't I do it if I feel good by doing it, and
Yeah.
I can do it anytime, any place, anywhere, and
Yeah.
it's a healing activity for me? Why wouldn't I? Right. So, anyways, I'm fully
You're you're drinking the
engaged in
Kool-Aid.
singing
You're
is
on
healing.
board. I can tell you what we've observed with
Yes.
singing on your own. So most of what we do is singing in groups,
Yes.
but I can say that singing on your own, what we see systematically is that um, people's cortisol levels drop. So cortisol um, is released, of course, when we are under stress. When we have high levels of cortisol, our immune system doesn't function as well as it would otherwise. And this is one of the most regular kind of findings that we see with singing on your own or in a group. Um, we don't know entirely why. It could be regularizing the breathing as a function of that, activating the parasympathetic nervous system. When you are under stress, you're not necessarily breathing at a regular pace. You might be biting your lip, holding your breath. But when you're singing and you're singing with a phrase, you got to get it all out. You've got to be regular.
Exactly. That's right.
And that's telling your body that, hey, I'm okay. Let's release the rest and restore kind of functions. So it's possible that that's some of the benefit you're getting. I'm sure there's much more going on. There's a little bit of evidence for release of immunoglobulin A, which is linked to the mucose linings that help with inflammation, which of course is at the source of many diseases. That's about as much as we know about singing on your own. Singing in a group, what we've observed is that people feel less lonely. Maybe that's obvious, but the effect is greater than other group activities. So when we control for as many things as we can, we find that singing has this rapid effect on your feeling of being connected with other people.
Right. More than just any other activity. Just not you're isolating out the group part of it, the lonely part, and saying, hey, this is the activity that makes the difference.
Yeah. So for example, we've compared it to yoga.
Yeah.
Yoga is something that makes people feel good, like singing. There are many differences, but those are some similarities. You do it often in a group, but you don't synchronize your voices and your bodies in the same with the same tight level of synchrony that you do with singing.
No.
The focus is more inward when you're doing yoga. So there's certainly healing things that come from yoga, but we think that it's something about synchronizing with other people that releases oxytocin, that allows you to feel like these people are part of your clan, part of your group. And there are all kinds of other benefits that come from that. People can withstand more pain. So we actually administer small amounts of pain, and we find that people can withstand more of it when they report feeling connected to other people. So after they've done this group singing activity. You don't get this, by the way, from singing on your own, at least not in our research.
Okay.
So you get some of the benefits, but not all of the benefits.
Yeah. That's when you first started the thing, said, hey, well, we studied a little bit for people that sing on their own. I thought you were going to come up with this big reveal. And the people that sing on their own, that's the first descent into madness. No. Anyways, I really been, I know all of the research seems to be on group singing, choral singing. And I think that's probably because what I do is a little odd. Like nobody stands up and does like a cappella singing. Nobody does that.
But you're motivating me to want to learn more about it. I just think there's few people that would be as motivated as you are to keep doing it. And often the benefits you get from singing, you get by, doing it again and again. I think you're an odd duck, and I don't know. But that's not to say that, I think that it would be interesting to figure out what some of those benefits are beyond what we've talked about, the reduction in cortisol.
I think in the last 2 years, I think I have dialed back my biological age 10. That's what I think from singing.
That's amazing.
But I'm too cheap to spend $1,000 to get the biological test to prove that, because you could do the thing that compares your chronological age of your, but I'm not going to spend $1,000.
Yeah. No, you've planted a seed. I'm thinking more about individual singing, but the reason we've moved to group singing. So we did start out by looking at what we started out our singing interventions with Parkinson's patients and getting them to sing on their own, and looking at what it did to different vocal outcome measures. And we found some benefits, but what we found is that it was painful, that, the people found it painful, that I got to come in here, I got to rehearse this. And we thought, let's just make it fun. Like, it doesn't have to seem like a therapy. Let's do it in groups. and then you get the motivation of other people, and the chit chat and the friendships form, and it kind of builds on itself. So that's the model we've taken for seeding our well-being choirs. We didn't invent this model. Obviously, people have been group singing for a long time, but we find that it's a sustainable and a scalable way to introduce group singing for rehabilitation.
Yeah, makes sense. And you know what? Group singing, for people to sing in a group, they're going to go away on their own. They're going to sing on their own as well, because they're going to be practicing their parts, or
you got it.
So one is going to fuel the other, right? So
you got it.
Yeah.
All the group singing benefits we've observed, we've never said, hey, don't sing on your own, because we expect them to sing on their own. That's part of the therapy. They're practicing on their own so that they don't embarrass themselves when they get to the group.
Right.
It's this sort of psychological trickery that everybody's in on the trickery. It's not really
exactly.
But that's part of it. We're social creatures. We're motivated by being feeling like we're letting the group down. So that's part of it.
Hey, Frank, I want to be cognizant of the time. You said you had a limited time. We're 6 after right now. Is that, are you good?
Yeah. I've got let's say 8-9 more minutes. So if there's any things that you have in mind that you thought it would be fun to dig into, that you think I might know something about?
Well, I think you probably, and we might have already had a conversation about this. Vagus nerve. Did we chat about vagus nerve?
We did a little bit. Like you told me a little bit about what you think is going on with the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
So I know that the vagus nerve is a hot topic these days, and it's implicated in the gut-brain connection. How is it that changes in our diet or changes in the gut, how does all this get communicated upstairs? And one of the vehicles is through the vagus nerve. So through the peripheral nervous system into the central nervous system. I don't know too much about the vagus nerve. I know there are interesting therapies that are targeted at the vagus nerve that seem to help with different disorders. Yeah, so I don't know where the depth of my knowledge is. It's not something I've directly done research on.
Well, I probably don't have a very nuanced approach to it, but I have an approach that works for me. I know there's 3 different ways that vagus nerve can function. And one is a disassociative response, which is basically where a person, an animal or a human, is in a situation where there is an overwhelming force against them, and they're going to experience pain. And the body just goes to protect you by flooding you with endogenous opioids and just kind of getting you through it, and disconnects really your brain from your body, right? That's going to happen. And then the dorsal response is basically where you're always on alert. So you're always kind of scanning for risk, concerns, that kind of a thing. So it's obviously you can function, but it's a place where you cannot really, your body can't relax and restore and heal and rejuvenate. Yeah. And then this ventral vagus response, and Stephen Porges is like the guy. Yeah. So Stephen Porges, and then from there's a whole bunch of practitioners who work with this, and it seems to be most EDMR practitioners as well, eye movement desensitization reprogramming folks, they seem to speak of vagus nerve like routinely all the time.
Yeah.
Anyways, one of the things that I've found is that there are a number of activities you or I could choose. Like there's a switch in our body we can turn on to get us to that ventral vagus response. For me, I know singing works. For me, singing works. And so for me, that's why it's such a potent therapy for me, if you will, that I know that I'm going to elicit that response. Yeah. And when I'm doing, what am I flooding my body with? Tonic, good, feel good type stuff, right? Oxytocin. Well, you're not sure about the oxytocin.
I'm not sure. We haven't seen the oxytocin, but it's possible. I can imagine how if you really feel connected to the artist or the music, you might get some oxytocin release. But we're talking the same language. We just are not observing things through the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve may be implicated in the kinds of responses we're looking at. So what we see we're tracking cortisol, we're tracking heart rate variability.
Yes.
So so you know that you can have stressors that cause your heart rate variability to go down, or when you rest and relax, your heart rate variability can go up, which is a good thing. It's on a chronic level, it's linked to longevity. So the vagus nerve may be part of this mechanism, but the way that I talk about it is that singing, one of the things singing is doing is it's activating the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and relax system you described, that Porges implicates the vagus nerve specifically, and it's possible that that's critical, but that we're not looking at what we're looking at through that lens. We're taking saliva samples and we're looking at cortisol, or we're measuring heart rate variability, or we're measuring pain tolerance. These are the kind of outcome measures that we're looking at.
Well, on a single a cappella type perspective, I would volunteer for testing about solo type singing, because I'm pretty certain I know what experience I'm having in my body, and that, you know, so I would love to have some numbers.
You're already at ceiling. You'd have to agree to not sing, which you may not be willing to do.
No.
There you go.
Exactly. I have a recommended singing allowance every day that has to be met for me to be at where I want to be. So yes.
I like that. RSA, recommended singing allowance. Yeah.
Exactly. Hey, Frank, I think this has been a lovely chat. I encourage people, I put a little note on about singwell.ca to check you out. And I think the research you're doing is like really, really important. And just the encouraging people to sing. And I know choral is great. I encourage people to sing individually, and they don't have to stand in front and do it, stream it. I mean, you just do it anywhere, in your car, anywhere. And it's super, super healing for you. Like, everybody can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, Alan. Thanks for chatting.
Thanks, Frank. Keep yourself well.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. See ya.